Good morning, everyone. We are here testing the LCD-1 versus a competitor that is a fraction of the cost, the Rane Audio RH50. And the reason we're making this comparison is because there's a lot of misinformation, a lot of marketing hype, and a lot of reviewer bias hype that has promulgated the internets. Let me make sure this is focused downwards. Let me bring this down just a little bit, just a tiny bit. Okay. So this is $400, the LCD-1 is. And this is, depending on where you get it, between $50 and $60. So obviously there's a huge price difference. And I've mentioned the RH50 a couple of times. I did in an unboxing, and then I also had a post, and people ask me, how is it possible that such a cheap dynamic driver headphone, I mean, look, I know it flops, how such a cheap dynamic driver headphone could possibly compete with one of Audeze's best? I mean, look at this. The Audeze LCD-1 review from Inner Fidelity, finally released on December 30th, 2019. I want you to think about this for a moment, about the marketing hype behind this particular headphone. So the LCD-1 was released, I think, in October. Somebody from Inner Fidelity, whatever the hell his name is, it doesn't matter, was gushing about the LCD-1. It's so fantastic. And they put that person's recommendation on Audeze's website. And from October until December 30, 2019, there was no concerted review from Inner Fidelity. Zero. The only review that we actually did have was from Metal 571, and frankly, we're going to leave that alone for now because there's plenty of people who disagree with Metal 571 and what he did in that review. But here you are, several months later, finally you get a review from Inner Fidelity after shilling and shilling and shilling, saying it's the most fantastic, but not particularly providing a review until after Christmas. I find that a little strange. Now, maybe I'm just reading too much into it. I'm not trying to make a conspiracy theory or anything. I'm just looking at the facts as they present themselves and then trying to reach logical conclusions. So the LCD-1 is supposed to be amongst Audeze's best. So Audeze, here's what they say. I don't know if you can read this. You probably can't. So I'll move this over a little bit. This is what Audeze says. This is their ad splash website. When you go to Audeze LCD-1, when you search that in Google, they say astonishingly accurate sound for the Audeze LCD-1. Astonishingly accurate sound. Well, I was reading the particular Inner Fidelity review, and here's what they say. Quote, the Audeze's LCD-1 is my favorite expression of Audeze's reference tuning. If one were to look at a compensated curve, the sound is essentially designed to be flat from sub-bass up to about 2 kilohertz, after which there's a gradual roll-off and the treble flattens out after about 6 kilohertz, but remains a reduced level compared to the bass and mid-range. The LCD-1 doesn't have the deepest sub-bass of the larger models, but gets pretty darn close. The upper mid-range presence region, around 2 to 4 kilohertz, is probably just a decibel or two lower in level than what is truly, quote, neutral, according to a number of Olive Welty-style curves. So here's why I'm telling you this. It's because whenever you have a big company marketing a product that it finds essential, because the LCD-1 is essential to Audeze. They need to sell more headphones. They need to bring down their prices so that it's in line with everything else that's selling currently. And they need this to be successful. And even when reviewers find that the claims the manufacturers make is not true, those reviewers will bend over backwards to minimize the false findings, right? To minimize the fact that they found the manufacturer claims were not accurate. And so that's exactly what's going on here. No, it's not the most neutral. No, it's not. No, yes, there's some issues with the roll-off, and no, it has some peaks and had some the dips, but you know what? It still sounds great. It's generally free from huge peaks, That's what they say. It is generally free from huge peaks. And Audeze wants you to spend $400 for these. Inner Fidelity wants you to spend $400 for these. In comparison, you have the RH50 from Rane. They have 40mm dynamic drivers, 10 hertz to 20,000 hertz. They have an SPL of 102 decibels, which is fantastic, meaning that the Rane can be powered by virtually anything. So 102 decibels is extremely excellent. You can use your cell phone to drive these. You can use your DAP to drive these. Now, obviously, this is 16 or 13 ohm, depending on where you go to listen to it, because Audeze can't get the story together. So it's very low impedance. In fact, this is about IEM impedance levels. That being said, the mere fact that both of these headphones can be driven by mobile devices doesn't mean that you should drive them by mobile devices. We know for a fact that often having a dedicated amplifier can provide better sonic results for your particular headphone because your headphone drivers require a certain amount of power, consistent power, that cell phones won't provide for various reasons. Excuse me. So let's talk a little bit about these headphones. We know that the Audeze LCD-1 is the vast majority of it is plastic. It's fine. I mean, there's nothing really terrible about it, but for $400, I would expect that Audeze would provide something significantly better. There's no wobbliness to it. I think fairly well built. It's sturdy for a plastic headphone. On the other hand, you have the Rane, and you've already seen this. So this happens. That's all I can say. This happens, depending on how you pick it up. But overall, even though that this is made of plastic, probably the LCD-1 has slightly denser plastic than the Rane. But I've had this in my bag. I've thrown it in a travel bag. I've taken it on road trips. I've used it at home. Use it at the office, and frankly, this thing doesn't even have a scratch on it. I think it's lasting fairly well. Both headphones have metal metal headband. Obviously, the Audeze headband is more robust. There's no doubt about that. But there's plastic right underneath. So there's plastic, then there's metal. So the metal appears to be more sturdy than the one on the Rane, but it's really not. It's just a little bit wider. It's just as thin as on the Rane, except that it has a plastic backing here to give it rigidity. The LCD-1 can be used as with balanced cables. The Rane can't. The Rane folds up just like the LCD-1, but better. See, the LCD-1, I gotta take this off then. The LCD-1 has one trick. It can do this, right? This is how the LCD-1 folds. The Rane folds this way like a V-Moda headphone, or it can do this, just like the LCD-1. It's the same size, essentially, right? Now that doesn't really matter. It's neither here nor there. The cable that the Rane comes with has a proprietary lock, which is unfortunate. That means that you're going to have to find a cable that will lock if you wanted a replacement cable. I think if you get a longer jack, you might be able to just fit it in there without having to worry about locking. I've done that with several other headphones in the past, and I'm fairly certain you could do that with this one, although I haven't actually tried it. The ear cups are really, frankly, very soft. Very, very soft. And 3 knuckles, oval shaped, which is what it's supposed to be. Good thing to have it oval shaped. That's something that Neumann with their NDH20 somewhat forgot. Same thing with the LCD LCD-1, 3 knuckles. You know, the pads on the LCD-1 are more dense, but they're not memory foam comfort dense. I mean, they may be memory foam, I don't know. I think that they say it's some sort of memory foam in here. But look at this. It's like a sponge. If you have a sponge at home that you use to clean your dishes, press down on it. I mean, can you hear that? You can hear the air being pushed out with this sponge-like ear cup. And frankly, for me, over long periods of time, say an hour or longer, I have to take these off because the clamping force on this, plus the fact that these things aren't really all that comfortable, make it difficult for me to wear this for an extended period. The Rane, on the other hand, is much softer, and there's no, see? Same amount of air being pushed out as with the $400 LCD-1. However, I would say that the Rane actually sits a bit more comfortably on my head than the LCD-1 does. All right? Now the headband, there is padding, definitely. Is it enough padding? It's less padding than there is on the LCD-1. There's no doubt about it. But because the Rane has slightly less clamping force, and I think that it sits a little bit more comfortably around my ears, I don't really feel the pressure on the top of my head. I do feel the pressure from the LCD-1 because, again, look at this. This is not memory foam type effect. This is like foam that you have inside a really old couch or a futon. You know, I don't know. I don't know what it is. It's really annoying. Look. And this is how Audeze wants you to spend $400. I mean, fit and finish is absolutely essential when you're charging an astronomical price for a pair of headphones, and comfort is critical. So if you have a pair of headphones that seems to have quality materials, but then on closer inspection, it feels like it's something that you pulled out of, out of a couch in your garage and stuffed into a headphone padding. That's kind of a problem, don't you think? Now, we've been talking about this just general stuff so far, right? We spent about 13 minutes talking about fit and finish and all that stuff. Well, it's important for you to know, because there are going to be plenty of people out there who are always going to say, no, 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 I will never buy anything like this. I would rather prefer to buy the LCD-1. I trust Audeze. I trust Inner Fidelity. I do not trust you. I trust only famous people who say stuff to me so that they can get more free products from big companies. Totally cool with me. But for those individuals who are not yet really convinced by the LCD-1, or who really don't want to spend $400 for something that they market as mixing and mastering, but it appears, at least from even their most favored reviewers, is probably not that. If you don't want to spend $400 for a lackluster experience, maybe you want to spend $60 for a better experience. And that is where we're going to head with. Head to. All right, so now let's get started with the actual sound test. I have both headphones plugged into an A/B switch. This one is going to be LCD-1, 2 is going to be the RH50. Both headphones are plugged into, boom, you see that? The THX887 from Monolith, plugged into the SMSL SU8. And by the way, if you see this is something new. We're going to talk about that at some point. Currently set at low gain. I'm going to push it up to medium gain. It's being fed by 1/4 inch, not 3.5 millimeter. I don't know why. I just decided to 1/4 inch. Currently set to 0 volume. Now, since we're already talking about the 887, I want you to know that it's really difficult to tell where the volume is because the 887 has no real markings here, and there's a little notch, but you can easily miss it. All right, so I'm going to put the volume at 0, and then I'm going to increase the volume to figure out what is the optimum level for both headphones. All right, so let's get started with the LCD-1. Let's go to our test playlist. We're going to start the bass response test. And with the bass, we're going to go to mountains. So we have mountains playing, and I'm going to increase the volume slowly until I can actually hear it. Right there. And so that's probably, so the volume actually starts from 7 o'clock. That's 0. 0 is 7 o'clock. And I can start hearing around 8 o'clock. 9 o'clock, it's finally audible. And then we're about 10 o'clock, where I can start to hear the background hum in the song. We're still at medium gain here. I'm going to increase to 12 o'clock. And at 12 o'clock, it sounds like about normal volume as I would be sitting in a room, a quiet room, and just listening to my headphones. It's not particularly loud. Now, this song requires power, more volume, just because of the way that it's recorded. I'm going to increase the volume again. We are at about 1 o'clock, and at 1 o'clock, I finally feel as if there's sufficient power going into the headphones to be able to listen to mountains the way it's supposed to be heard. All right, so we're going to keep that in mind, 1 o'clock. And let's restart. Okay, so here we go. And at the very beginning of the song, you hear this background noise. It can sound like a hiss or a hum or a distortion that's just inherent in the song. I hear the rumble, but it's significantly rolled off. In very fast transients, just like planar magnetics are supposed to have, but you really can't feel that rumble. You can easily miss it if you have lower volume. I hear that bass rumble slightly. I hear the tick-tock effect. It's like, you know, wood instruments clacking against each other. I'm going to skip to middle of the song to where the crescendo is. And here comes the crescendo. This is where the organ should come in full bore. It should have an immediate effect. So you could hear the organ. You can hear the organ, but it sounds pretty subdued. You can hear that rolling thunder effect right after that, around 2 minutes and 5 seconds. And again, that sounds very subdued. There's a bit of muddiness there where the organ and that thunder effect kind of meld together. And you kind of start losing detail in the treble region. And the treble region actually has some of these synthetic sounds. It's synth music, and it's got some distortion that's built into the song, and that all those elements become a little muddied, a little joined together. So let's go back a couple seconds and listen to that again. Yeah, the rumble and the organ are melding right here. And I can't hear that distortion anymore. And it just sounds like a hot mess. You have multiple instruments for this song, and the only thing that I can hear are the organ and the rumble, and those things are just kind of smashed together. There's supposed to be a, I think there's supposed to be some sort of cymbal, and there's supposed to be a kind of a synth sound also mixed into this portion of the song, but you can't hear the separation. It's simply not present. It just sounds like everything is dumped into a large pot and then stirred together. You simply cannot hear the different elements. The organ is supposed to be overbearing. That is absolutely true. And in a way, the LCD-1 does provide that, but it's not supposed to be so overbearing that it muddies everything. There are headphones that present it in that manner, but they're not $400. Oh wait, they are $400, but they're not. You can get a pair of $50 headphones off of Amazon, and they will provide muddy representation of this portion of the song. I'm just not particularly happy that the LCD-1 provides a muddy representation of this song at $400. It just doesn't seem right to me. Okay? The takeaway is that the LCD-1 has a very lean bass effect where it has a very, very fast transients. That is true, but you don't really get the rumble, and you really don't get the separation of the bass from the mid bass, and the sub bass and the mid bass, and from the bass to the mids. It's just too much melding going on there. All right, so let's switch to the RH50. Let me put this on correctly. And by the way, there are numbers on the side, so you know exactly where you want to lock in on either end. Okay, I'm going to bring this back down to 7 o'clock, which is where it starts, set at medium gain. Let's restart the song. Here we go. And I'm going to start bringing this up. So about 8 o'clock, I start hearing it. 9 o'clock, it's still a little difficult to hear. 10 o'clock, I hear less volume than I did on the LCD-1. 12 o'clock, still less. 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock is close to what I heard on the LCD-1, so but it's not quite the same. I'm going to say about 2 o'clock. Yeah, about 2 o'clock sounds the same as the LCD-1 did at 1 o'clock, approximately. So let's restart. So there's a bit more clarity to the RH50. You can hear the click, clack, click, clack. It seems to have a bit more presence to that particular instrument. You can hear the rumble in the background. It's not overbearing. It seems fairly close to the LCD-1, the rumble effect. The soundstage seems to be the same with the LCD-1, even though these are open back, the LCD-1, and the RH50 is closed back. Okay, so let's skip to the middle of the song. And the organ should be hitting right about now. Yeah, far less muddy organ representation than on the LCD-1. You can hear the rolling thunder effect separate from the organ. You could hear all the other brass and wind instruments crystal clear versus the LCD-1 just sounded muddied and joined together. That rolling thunder effect is fairly lean, just like on the LCD-1, but all the instruments are separated. I'm going to bring the volume down to 12 o'clock. Okay, so the biggest thing I've heard here is the bass response for both of these is very similar. It's fairly lean, but the transients, I think, is probably a little bit faster on the LCD-1, just a tiny bit. The separation of everything during the crescendo is much more pronounced on the RH50 than it is on the LCD-1. You can hear the organ, you can hear the rolling thunder effect separate, where the LCD-1 kind of melded the two together. You can hear the other instruments, even though you have the organ and the sub-bass rolling thunder sort of effect, you can still hear the other instruments clearly on the RH50. Whereas on the Audeze, it melds everything together. And so you just get this weird potpourri of sound. And you really can't tell what is what. The organ, maybe. Yeah, you can hear the organ, but you can't hear all the other elements in the song. The RH50, on the other hand, seems to separate all of that easily, so that you can hear that there are, in fact, other elements in the music, where the LCD-1 simply can't do that. Okay, so I'm going to leave the volume at noon. I'm going to put the LCD-1 back on my head. We're going to go to Pure Water by Mustard and Migos. Let's see how this goes. Ready? And 12 o'clock is very loud for this song. Vocals sound clear. The bass thump is simply not present. It sounds very lean. So I've said this before, there are several types of bass. There's the really annoying bass where your neighbor's kid has a car that he bought. It's a Honda Civic from 1994, and he tricked it out after spending 2 years working at KFC, saving all his money, and he got a giant subwoofer and put it in his trunk because he's going to be fly, and he's going to really impress the honeys. And so what he's going to do is sit outside your house in the middle of the night with some weird girl in his passenger seat who really doesn't want to date him, and what he does to try to impress her and try to get her pants off is he turns on this song, and then he ratchets up the bass, the subwoofer in the trunk. And all you hear in your house around 12 o'clock in the morning as you're trying to go to sleep because you have a long day ahead of you is whum, 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 whum. And you're just hoping, sitting there in bed, boy, I wish I had a gun right now. That's not this bass. I'm just saying, that's not this bass, but that's really awful bass. Then there's thumping bass that's clear and distinct. Thump, 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 right? Boom, boom, boom. And that type of bass is also not the LCD-1. Instead, the LCD-1 gives you a very lean bass response. With hip-hop songs, the bass acts like a metronome. It's supposed to have this sort of emphasis effect where you're supposed to hear boom, boom, boom. There's supposed to be a thump, an audible, a discernible thumping sound to the bass. The LCD-1 doesn't provide any sort of experience like that. Instead, what it provides is an incredibly lean bass. You know it's there, you can hear it, but you can miss it at lower volume. So we're at noon. I'm going to play the song. I'm going to bring it down. At 9 o'clock, you can hear the bass, but it just sounds like it's muffled. Increase the volume to noon. You can hear the bass, but for this song, the vocals sound that they're 5 feet ahead of the bass instrument, and the bass instrument is somewhere behind some door in a closet, and you can barely hear it. And maybe that's how you want to experience this particular song. That's totally fine, but I don't think it really represents the song accurately. That's not Pure Water. It's not boom, 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 boom. Somewhere in the background, somebody's playing the drum. Boom, 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 boom. There's a thumping effect back. There's a subwoofer somewhere down the block. Boom, 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 boom. I can't barely hear it. That's not the song. Instead, the LCD-1 thinks that's the song. If you listen to these types of tracks and you like bass, the LCD-1 is definitely not for bass. I don't think it presents bass remotely accurately. All right, so let's go to the Rane RH50. Currently set 50%, or 12 o'clock. We're probably going to have to bring that down or up. We'll see. Nope. It sounds a little bit less quiet than on the LCD-1, so I'm going to increase to 1 o'clock. That sounds about right. So the bass on the RH50 is so close to the one on the LCD-1. It's the same amount of leanness to the bass. Yeah, I would say it presents the bass in practically the same way as the LCD-1. A bit lean, muffled, like it's somewhere in the background somewhere, behind a closet door. As far as the clarity of the vocals, I think they both have the same amount of clarity. As I said, on the LCD-1, it sounds like the vocals are 5 feet ahead of the bass instrument. I would agree about the same with the RH50. The transients of that bass thump, boom, 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 is faster on the LCD-1 than it is on the RH50. So at least with the RH50, you still get a bit of that bass emphasis, more so than the LCD-1. It's momentary, but you can hear it in an A/B test. Boom, boom, boom. Boom. Yeah. So as far as the bass response goes, it sounds very, very similar. The only real difference I would say is that the LCD-1 has faster transients, the RH50 slightly slower transients. Vocals sound about the same distance from that bass instrument. They both have bass that's in the background somewhere, a little bit muffled for this particular song, not particularly accentuated, which is consistent with the way that both headphones presented Mountains, right? Okay, so let's go to one last song. Let's go to Moons by MB. Switch back to the LCD-1. Now, Moons, I'm going to bring this back down to 12 o'clock. So now, Moons, in the middle of this song, Moons, the bass is going, and there's a brief hesitance, and then it's supposed to dun 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 dun. You know, there's a quick rapport, boom, 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 and that's the part of the song that I'm fairly certain Joshua Velour uses for his intros. So if you're interested in getting that song, it's Moons by MB. So I'm just going to skip ahead. So there's a lot of synth music here. We're at 1 minute and 55 seconds. And there's supposed to be 2 bass instruments, 2 drums, a bigger drum and a faster drum. And they should be presenting themselves any second now. So we're going to hear the pause in the synth type music. I hear the smaller drums coming up in the background, a little muted. They're reaching up in volume. Okay, pause. Pause, 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 and now. So it goes din 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 din, boom, ba boom, ba boom, boom, ba boom, right? So if you go back to about 2 minutes and 33 seconds, there's a pause, and about 2 minutes and 35 seconds or so, there's the faster drum, boom, 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 and then right after the third bump, there's boom, 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 boom. There's that bigger sub bass rumble, thump, right? They're supposed to be. The LCD-1 has a very, very fast transients for all of the drum effect. Okay, so we're paused, 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 and there you go. Dun, 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 dun. You can hear the cymbal at the very last fast drum. Dun. So I'm gonna hear it again. It's undistorted. I'll give you that. It's definitely undistorted. You can hear the bass. It's very, very fast transients, but there's no bass umph, right? So if you're looking for umph, it's not there. But it's very, very fast transients. So let's switch to the RH50. I'm going to increase the volume to 1 o'clock so we can get volume matched. And let's restart. Here we go. Sounds about the same so far. I'm going to move ahead to so we're at 2 minutes 28 seconds, 2 minutes 30 seconds, and we're at a pause. In about 4 seconds, we're going to hear that tin. So right about now. Slight bass increase. That could just be because of the volume matching. So let's just attribute it to the volume matching, but there's maybe another decibel, 2 decibel increase in the sub bass on the RH50 than on the Audeze. But I'm going to attribute that to the actual volume matching because it's really hard to volume match on something that doesn't even have a number. What I can say is that the transients of the bass is different. Obviously, the LCD-1 has faster transients. The RH50 has slower transients in comparison. But with that slow transients, I think you get the effect. Boom, 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 boom. you kind of get this boom, 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 this lingering effect to the song that to some people might be very pleasant. Let's listen to it again. Yeah, so for the RH50, it goes boom, ba boom, 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 ba boom, boom, ba boom, 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 ba boom. Right, you hear that? Boom, ba boom. Slight lingering. Whereas with the Audeze, if we switch to the Audeze, let's bring this back. Yeah, with the Audeze, it's boom, ba boom, 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 ba boom. Whereas with the Rane, it's boom, ba boom, 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 ba boom. Very, very slight difference. So the transients is definitely a little, it's faster on the planar magnetic. There's no doubt about that. But the Rane is not all that, it's not a significantly amount slower, the transients. It's within reach, is what I would say. So whereas the Rane presents just a little bit longer resonance with that sub bass, boom, 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 boom. The LCD-1 a little bit faster. Other than that, the bass sounds very, very, very similar in both. All right, so let's talk about conclusions for the bass response. You know, I'm sorely, I was going to say disappointed. I should be careful. But I'm not particularly happy with the LCD-1's marketing. And the performance of the LCD-1 is not outstanding. It's not something that I would say, oh my goodness, these are the best headphones under $500. As some individuals have said, you can find them on YouTube, you know who they are. These headphones, I'm looking at them as if they were my wife and I'm about to marry them. These things are going to follow me to the altar. These things are the best. They're not. They're not. All right, they're good. They're good headphones. They're very good headphones. But for $500, well, $400. For $400, they're not that great. Let's talk about bass. You would expect from planar magnetic headphones clean, clear bass response, sub bass presence. You would expect no muddiness. Excuse me. You would expect very fast transients. So the LCD-1 provides fast transients. It provides some of the bass, doesn't provide significant amount of sub-bass rumble. It provides some of the separation, but it doesn't provide all the separation. So the separation between the sub-bass and the mid-bass is not particularly good. It's melded. It was melded with mountains. The separation between the bass and the mids is present, like it was in Pure Water. But that separation isn't particularly natural sounding. You have the mids that sound like 5 feet ahead of the bass instrument, and the bass instrument sounds pretty quiet in comparison. Okay? Then you have songs like Mountains, where during the crescendo you have the organ, you have the rolling thunder sub-bass effect, you have other orchestral music instruments, and when you get the crescendo, all you hear is this jumble of sound that's simply not well separated. You can hear stuff, you can hear the organ, but you can't hear the sub-bass rumble clearly. There's not sufficient separation there. You definitely cannot hear the other multiple instruments that are in the mix at that point. In comparison, you have the RH50, which I would say has a fairly lean bass effect as well, very similar to the LCD-1. The transient is a little bit slower than on the LCD-1, but not a significant amount. We're not talking about, you know, a 5-minute mile versus a 10-minute mile. That's not what we're saying here. What I'm saying is 5-minute mile and about 5-minute and 50-second mile. If we're going to put it in those terms. Yeah, it's a little bit slower, no doubt. But it's not that slow that you're going to say, oh my God, this thing, why is it even running the race? The separation of the mids from the bass on Pure Water was very, very similar to the LCD-1. The bass also sounds a bit like it's in the distance in some sort of closet, like on the LCD-1. But here's the thing. In mountains, the separation during the crescendo is significantly better on the RH50 than it is on the LCD-1. The RH50 separates the organ from the sub-bass rolling thunder effect from all the other instruments in the mix. You can hear them. There's a bit more energy in the treble frequency on the RH50 than on the LCD-1, which significantly rolls it off. I mean, there's a huge roll-off that you're missing all that sparkle that's supposed to be in that song at that point, that the RH50 does in fact provide. Maybe not neutral, technically not 100% neutral. We'll get to the treble effect and we'll find out. But this is also definitely not neutral. So what are you left with? You're left with a dog here. Where did that come from? So you're left with two headphones for bass response that sound very similar to each other. And on top of that, there are significantly different prices for these two. Now, obviously, you're not here just for the bass. Why the hell would you spend $400 for a headphone from Audeze for bass? You wouldn't. I know that. But this is how we start the comparison. We talk about how these things compare to each other at the bass, then we go to the mid, then we go to the treble, and then we talk about overall conclusion. And it doesn't start off particularly well here. If you have a pair of headphones that's $400, and this $400 pair of headphones in the bass response performs no better than the closed-back $50, $60 headphone from a company you haven't heard of before, I think that's sufficient evidence for you to kind of take a step back and say, what's going on? I want to know why there's not enough of a big separation between these two. When we start comparing the mids, then we'll have more information. You can figure out whether or not this was just a fluke, and you can live with the fact that this thing sounds very similar to a $60 plastic headphone for bass. And then we'll get to the treble. You can figure out, oh, maybe the LCD-1 does sound a whole lot better, more neutral than the $60 headphone from Rane. We'll see. But for right now, let's just be honest with each other. Anybody who says that money brings you better, it needs a choke pill. Okay, they need a dose of reality. Money does not equal better. Money just means that you're paying more. That's all it means. So I want to make sure you understand that. All right, so I hope everybody has a wonderful day. We'll talk about this headphone again in the future, hopefully in a couple of days. Everybody take care.